Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkopolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Hello again, entrepreneurs. Back again with Dr. Jeff Cornwall. This week talking about his blog, Life's a Pitch. Be ready. We'll be back right after this message.
Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkopolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Talkopolis, the social media TV network for your city.
Welcome back, everybody. Brian, Dr. Jeff. We're going to be talking about his blog post this week, Life's a Pitch. Be ready. And this one, I won't say hand over the reins, but Jake Jorgervin, I believe is how the name's pronounced, who's an alumni, right. Presumably a former student of yours, if you're letting him put in work on your blog, kind of has the outline for how to prepare for a pitch and how to always be ready for it. Right. And I think that was kind of the most important thing that I took away from it. He has 5 guidelines that we'll run through. But to me, if you need to be ready for a pitch and if you're preparing one, it seems to me that the biggest thing you should avoid is assumption. And that in making the assumption that, 1, the person that you're talking about knows what you're talking about. Right. And 2, and maybe more importantly, that person cares what you're talking about.
Right. Yep, those are 2 critical points. First of all, I tell people they've got to get their pitch to a level where their grandmother could understand it.
Okay.
And that's sort of that assumption of understanding what they're talking about. And the other thing I try to remind entrepreneurs all the time of is that they're just gnats. They're annoying little gnats. There's so much going on. Nobody cares about their business like they do. A lot of times people don't even recognize they really need what they're trying to peddle. Yeah. And getting past the point of being an annoying gnat and getting somebody's attention takes practice and takes a really good craft. Absolutely. In terms of being able to explain what you're doing.
And I guess the most basic pitch that he says you should always have ready is the elevator pitch, so that you have something, and not that it needs to be targeted to a specific audience, but just a general overview of what you do, and that so that if it comes up at any point, because you never know if you're in a bar or an elevator or just some social gathering. If you had to go to dinner with your wife and you end up talking to someone, at the onset of that conversation, you're not going to know who that person is or what they do in the rest of their life.
I remember the first time I messed this up, and it was early on. Our healthcare company was just getting started, and we were at a social gathering, just a neighborhood thing, but there were some people there, let's just say, who could help us at some point down the road. And I just happened to get a conversation with one of them. He said, well, tell me what you do. And I realized probably about 3 or 4 minutes into my trying to explain it, that he had zoned out. And he was being polite, but he was waiting for me to catch a breath so he could say, oh, I've got to go fill up my glass of wine, I'll be back. And it was one of those moments where that self-awareness kind of thing, where you recognize in yourself that you're not ready. Yeah. And that you missed an opportunity. And I always I can see the guy's face. I can remember this like it was yesterday. And I always carry that with me to remind me why it's important to be able to no matter where you are, snap it out and just give it. So I do it in class all the time. I'll walk in and at the beginning of class, in the middle of class, at the end of class, I'll just point at somebody, I'll say, tell me about your business. And they have to spit out their pitch in a natural way, without note cards and without any kind of props, and just tell me exactly what they're doing. And with passion, with clarity, with conviction, and they get a lot of feedback from their peers in class if they don't do it well. I don't have to say much at that point. And one day this girl kind of grumbled about it. And that was the day that the phrase "life's a pitch" first happened, because I looked at her and I said, I said, you don't understand. Life's a pitch.
Yeah.
And there was this ripple of laughter across the class, and I realized that what I said may be misconstrued as somewhat inappropriate.
Yeah. Well, they're college kids.
But it got tweeted 5 times before the end of class, so I guess it
did pretty well.
Got the message across.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think to me, on his 5 lists, or his 5, I guess, points, to make sure that you present the case clearly as to what the problem is and what the solution is, but also to be concise in that. Because, like you said, you realized you were 3 to 4 minutes into yours and hadn't gotten to that point, hadn't communicated enough to draw the guy in. That conciseness would also be pretty good in presenting this is the problem I see, this is my solution to it.
Yeah, you've got to have basically a 30-second version of your pitch, a 2-minute version of your pitch, a 10-minute version of your pitch. You have to have an ability to adjust that elastically to whatever situation you're in.
Kind of vet the audience.
Absolutely, and the situation, and the hardest one is that 30-second one, because you do have to capture the problem and the solution in a way that someone can understand in that short period of time. It's the hardest thing there is.
Would you say that analogy plays well into that if you're trying to do the 30-second one?
Analogies, metaphors, I love all of that. Jim Stefancic, who's somebody we interviewed for this show recently, was a former student of mine. He was actually in my MBA program, and he was involved in a technology startup for a while, and his first few pitches sounded like reading an engineering manual, as a lot of people do that come at it from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I said, you've got to describe this in a way your grandmother would understand. He said, well, I can't. I said, well, you have to. And eventually he did. And he found a metaphor. They did image-guided surgery for device for surgeons to tell them where they were in the liver. And he basically came up with a metaphor. This is like a GPS system for liver surgeons.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get to brilliant, but that's right on.
Yeah.
And then even sticking with that he was kind of presenting from an engineer standpoint, is working on the delivery and making sure that you're not, one, just as monotone as you can be, but that you're delivering it correctly for the correct audience.
And there's 2 kinds of errors you can make. The monotone, boring, I'm not into this. I don't care if you are shy and kind of reserved. You got to get over that for this situation.
Yeah, you've got to be good about what you're trying to sell.
Because if you're not excited about it, they're not going to be excited about it. The other extreme is the person who becomes phony, fake, and sounds like a salesman.
Yeah.
And so you've got to walk a line between there. And,
yeah, you don't want to sell sham wows.
Exactly. And I say authenticity is the word you got to be thinking about. You got to be authentic on who you are and how you sell it. You're going to be different than me in a pitch, no matter what, because we have very different personalities. And everybody we come across is going to have a little bit different. They've got to be true to who they are, because that's when you engage somebody.
Absolutely.
When you're real.
And then I guess the last one, and it seems like it would be common sense, but clearly it's not. Practice, and practice often.
And people say, well, I ran through it a couple of times. The really good people, like, Jake has become a really, really effective person at making pitches. And he's done that by giving pitches literally hundreds of times. And really developing his speaking skills, his confidence, his eye contact, his ability to get that message across in whatever time he has. And he's the first one to tell you that it took him, a long period of time to practice. He practiced in school. Every business plan competition he could possibly get in, he'd enter just for the practice. And most of the people who we've worked with who've gotten really good at that, it's come from that. There's a few naturals. There's a few people, but they're few and far between. Most of us have to really work at that skill.
Yeah, and making sure, and he, again, and I think he picked this up by going to all those competitions, but making sure that you practice in front of different people. And I would say that that's going to help you a lot with dealing with different reactions, because you may pitch it to your dad and him just want to run down all the mistakes that you made, and then you pitch it to your mom and maybe she just wants to talk about all the great stuff you did.
Oh, you're so wonderful.
You did, right?
Yeah.
And how to react to that, and even to be cognizant of, all right, I may be getting great feedback, but I know that I messed up this point, and I need to reiterate whatever it was that I was unclear about. And just so that, I guess, to better know your pitch, and whenever you do miss something, how to circle the wagons and pick that up and then move on.
And a live audience, get out and pitch to groups that you're going to be pitching to. The first time you pitch to investors, you're probably not going to get an investment. But you're going to learn from that about what they respond well to, what they react well to, what seems to turn them off. And out of that, hopefully, you're going to get better the next time you pitch in front of investors.
Okay. Is there any last word of advice you'd like to give people on their pitches?
I think just be ready, and don't ever be surprised. Mm-hmm. It has to become natural. It has to become just like, tell me where you're from.
Yeah.
Tell me what high school you went to. It's got to become that much a part of your conversation repertoire that you have when you meet people. Absolutely.
All right, kids. Be ready. That's the biggest thing. Be ready to pitch to anybody at any time. I'm Brian Allen, Dr. Jeff Cornwall, giving you guys the knowledge. I'm just kind of guiding the ship. Have an excellent week. Come back again next time for another episode of the Entrepreneurial Mind.